Hello, good evening, and welcome back. As the election turmoil continues across the pond, we're keeping things this side as we go into the NHS in England moves to highest alert level. And I think it's important that these things are covered and known about, as much as we like to get flummoxed by what's going on in America, as it does impact us as well. This is, as I said last time, one of the times they will sweep through legislation that we're not really aware of and do things that we are not keeping them to the fire with. So before we get started, do please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff really does help the channel out. And with that, let's dive in. So, NHS in England moves to highest alert level. What does this mean? Well, essentially, they are concerned that they're going to be filling up 20,000 beds, which will be their capacity, and so they reserve the right to be able to move staff and patients around the nation as necessary. So, you're going to have some places harder hit than others, and just from COVID-19, and therefore the infrastructure, both with the buildings, the beds, and also with the staff, will not be appropriately proportioned around the country as the hotspots are. So in order to make up for that, instead of creating more hospitals for a short time, the idea is to move around the existing architecture in order to enable the people to get the treatment that they need. There is a concern if we scroll down to the graph that they show here for the current available capacity compared to what the government modelling suggests will happen as we go into almost the winter. So it's the rest of autumn. Winter doesn't start till Christmas, essentially. That's where Christmas comes from, the winter solstice. But the point being that we're expecting a higher usage of the NHS beds for flu-like symptoms, given that we normally see about 3,000 extra being taken in that time period because people have been staying indoors, they haven't been going outdoors, they haven't been exercising, and they haven't been eating well, and therefore there's more illness. A cold is called a cold, not because you've gotten cold, but because you've been inside and spreading germs and viruses with other people, and you haven't had the heat or the ultraviolet light in order to kill off those germs and viruses, which, funnily enough, is, of course, exactly what's been suggested in order to help contain COVID-19. But I suppose that's another issue for one of my many previous videos. But this is what they are expecting, okay? So you might be thinking, well, how does this compare to before? Because before we only had 42% of the hospital beds filled when it was over here. So how on earth is the current available capacity only this low compared to over here? And that's where it's a little bit misleading, because what this actually says is COVID-19 patients, but not the amount that are needing hospital beds. That's where it's misleading. So when they're saying we're going to have this many people with COVID-19 admitted to hospital, being patients, and it's going to be over 20,000, and that's going to be an issue, not necessarily, because over what time frame you're going to have 20,000? Are they all going to be at the same time? No, they're not. Are they all going to be in intensive care? No, they're not. Are they just going to be in and out? Quite possibly, in which case it is very misleading. And it's not just me saying that, of course, it's the official figures from earlier on in the year, where we saw they only hit 42% of their capability. But this week the Prime Minister warned that without action, the NHS would be placed in an impossible position, with the sick would be turned away because there was no room in our hospitals, and with doctors and nurses potentially forced to choose which patients to treat, who would live and who would die. That already happens. That does already happen. That's what happens with a socialised healthcare system, which is what the NHS is. For the point of view, so it covers everybody, individual mandate, if you will. Because everybody is covered, you can't decide which treatment you get. You are simply given the treatment. You can't decide to pick a different policy because it's the NHS, so you have to have the same policy as everybody else. And because of that, they then take into consideration other aspects. Instead of you as an individual, you'll just be slotted into different groups. So there could be if you're terminally ill, or if you're a cancer patient, or if you're obese, or if you're elderly, or if you've got an extra chromosome. These kinds of things are going to be taken into consideration about you, and the most important one there is, of course, age, twinned with terminal illnesses, and then that is going to decide if you get treated or not, and then the level of treatment you will get, and when it just becomes palliative care, if you even get that, if instead of being tossed out. But that is what happens already. They're called death panels for a reason. Panels of people who decide if you live or die. That already happens. Whereas Dr. Alison Pittard, Dean of the Faculty of Intensive Care Medicine, said she was confident the NHS was not going to collapse. Well, as it happens, at the moment, as you've probably already seen with times that you've been to A&E, is that a lot of people go, they really needn't. A lot of people go, well, maybe they could go to a GP, or maybe not at all. Because there is no cost to the individual when they go to the hospital, because they don't have insurance premiums, anything like that, they're not aware of the cost. And that is also a problem with insurance in America, where individuals are not aware of the cost of particular treatments, and it's just written off their insurance. And the same goes here, but to a worse extent, because it covers everybody. And therefore, it does create a tragic paradox in a way, that is, if you're trying to be good and not go to the hospital when you don't need to, you're missing out because other people are going to be using it, so you might as well. Because if they're thinking, oh, I've got a lump and it might be cancer, and you're thinking, oh, well, I've just hit my arm, it's just swollen, nothing much, well, why don't you go as well? Because you also have the same right that they do. What COVID has shown, though, is that when there is a concern of getting something worse, similar to what we saw with the super virus or superbug of MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, that people then won't be willing to go to the hospital as much as they did before, because they're more concerned about getting ill at the hospital than they are of what it is that they've got. And this is nice, because of course it means people who don't need to go aren't going. However, for the people that are incredibly scared of the coof, then it means people who should be going are not going. So although they're trying to say that, yeah, only when it gets to a certain point are we going to then be moving over, as I say here, the NHS could free up another 5,000 beds or so by cancelling some of the least urgent routine treatments. So yeah, we could do that. The NHS could cancel and deny you service. However, people are already taking it upon themselves to not have the services, which has led to cancer deaths in excess, as in above the average, that far exceed the amount of COVID deaths that we've had. So that's already happened. So this whole thing of, oh, we don't want to overstrain the NHS. Well, because people go there for things that they needn't, because they don't know how much it costs and they don't know when they should be going, when they shouldn't be going, and because there are far too many people coming into the country using the services without contributing at all, and the rate of growth for the NHS is not matching the rate of immigration, and the costs can't keep up because there aren't enough people paying into it. Bear in mind, you're only really a net contributor in the UK if you pay over 32 grand or earn over 32 grand a year before tax, which is less than half the population. Then you can see at the face of it how this is, of course, going to be a problem. And then when you bring in even more people who are earning less than that and do not even speak the language, then they're going to be an excess cost, not only because they're a net taker, but also because then you need the added impact of a interpreter in order to explain what things mean. And of course, then that's always going to get worse. And you would have thought COVID-19, oh, it's a virus from abroad, perfect time to take control of our borders. But apparently, the right-wing Conservative Party hasn't taken that upon themselves. But I think at this point, there are going to be a lot of people, similar to myself, that were thinking in the next election, let's vote against the biggest evil. So, Tories have the biggest chance of winning. So let's vote against, in order to vote against Labour, let's vote for Tories. However, since they've kind of been showing their true colours a bit more, that they're rather useless for anybody who's remotely right-wing, then we're going to be thinking, well, no, you haven't earned it. You're not as bad as them, but you really don't deserve my vote. I'm going to vote for somebody who is more akin to who I wish to vote for. And so that's why I'm thinking Keir Starmer's going to get in next, because the right-wing vote is going to be split too much by the Conservatives, Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party, Nigel Farage's Reform Party, and Petrograd Alternative. And on the left wing, Liberal Democrats and Greens, not really going to split it enough, but we can hope. We can hope there'll just be a disillusion. And I think, right, shit, we clearly don't know what people want. Let's try this again. And how about you actually listen to the indigenous folk and not the people who have just moved here? What a radical thought. But as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Always intrigued to what you guys has to say. Thank you for sticking through, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, all the good stuff. It really is helping, and I do appreciate it a tremendous deal. And as always, until next time, have a good one.